I'm Dr. Duke with the New American, and I'm really pleased today to be able to speak to Art Thompson, who is the CEO of the John Birch Society. And it really is a pleasure to talk to Art because he has seen over the last 50 years just how central the John Birch Society has been to so many of the key issues that we as conservatives want to see happen in this country. Art, thanks for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, we got to talk about trade.
Sure.
And you know, most Americans, when they hear trade and trade organizations and trade pacts, their eyes glaze over, right?
Yeah.
It's probably the least sexy, most important issue that faces this country. And ever since I've been involved with the society, trade has been one of the major action items. Talk about why trade and trade issues are so critical to the future of the country.
Well, first of all, when we're talking about free trade, that may be what's at the top of the line. That's what sold the various agreements and pacts and treaties and so forth. But free trade is between you and me. The minute the government gets involved with its regulations and controls, et cetera, it's no longer free trade. It's regulated trade. Now, in the agreements that we're fighting, like the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement and the TPP and the TTIP and all that other business, is that what we're doing is giving away the control of our economy to an international entity, particularly in the case of the USMCA, the United Nations. It does create a free trade commission, which bypasses the Congress once the Congress ratifies it. In other words, they can make any changes to the agreement without going back to Congress and things of that nature. So that's not right. The Constitution gives the mandate to the Congress to regulate foreign trade. These sorts of treaties take that away out of the hands of the American people's representatives and the Constitution. It can even amend the Constitution in the process for all practical purposes without actually amending it on the paper itself. So these are just some of the very superficial things that come to mind immediately. There are other deeper things that are very much involved in whether or not we can control our own economy. If we can't control our own economy as citizens of the United States, either as a free individual or as a nation, we will lose our country.
The treaty you just mentioned, the one that's going through now, if it passes, it would effectively create a North American Union, right?
That's the whole groundwork.
That's the whole
for
point.
It. It's the whole thing.
I have noticed in studying this that there are things that the United States and Canada, particularly with regards to fossil fuels, have to adhere to, but Mexico is exempt.
That's
so
correct.
It's one of these treaties where it's not an equal in a free trade treaty, is it?
No, the Mexicans realize they don't want to lose control of their own energy. And by energy, I'm talking about oil, gas, nuclear, coal, you name it. And so we will lose control over our own energy through this process. Now, it's not going to be overnight. These things will be done by step, incrementally, slowly, to where the citizen doesn't notice it until it's too late. But that's the way they operate. But the thing is that this thing is nearly 3,000 pages long. Now, I don't think Trump has actually read it. And he's just taking the word of Robert Lighthizer, who is the trade negotiator, for what's in it. And Robert Lighthizer is a globalist. He wants to create regional governments and then merge them into what they call their New World Order. And that's what this USMCA does. Okay, maybe the farmers and the ranchers and a few others will have better deals crossing the border with their goods and services. But it won't matter if we lose our sovereignty and independence. We can always recover from a bad economy and a loss of jobs. Can we recover our sovereignty and independence if we go into this treaty and others that will follow?
Why would a treaty like this same thing with the Paris Accords, right? Mm-hmm. All the Western nations have to sacrifice, but India and China, the two biggest polluters now, don't. Why in a situation like this would we even consider signing? I mean, I get that. I'm sure many haven't read this treaty, including probably Donald Trump. But it's in the news now that we're exempting Mexico we're letting Mexico continue to control its oil and wealth. Mm-hmm. Why would America and Canada even consider signing on to that when it is so unequal? I mean, wouldn't that be a deal breaker? Why does that seem to be a feature, not a bug?
Well, it's only part of a bigger, broader plan. Even the things that are going on in Congress right now by the Democrats and others are intent on literally destroying our nation. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you stretch out the line where this is all leading in the end. And this is just one snippet of that grandiose plan of taking away the power from the American people and investing it into the United Nations. And so it's part of energy, it's part of agriculture, it's part of industry, it's part of voting, it's part of immigration. All of that stuff is all part of a master agenda. And that's the thing that most people don't understand. This is all part of an agenda. It's all been pre-planned. And you need a counter agenda in order to fight it, to where you understand the big picture as well as the individual issue.
It's interesting. I think a lot of the American people who voted for Donald Trump, even if they're not savvy on the particular issues, it's exactly what they're trying to do. Put somebody in office who will look after America first. Like you said, let's control our own economy, not cede it to cartels basically beyond us.
Sure.
So many Americans believe in Donald Trump, and his entire base, I think, does believe that he wants to make America first again. So why is he, as a lifelong businessman as he's been, why do you think he is even inclining toward these types of treaties? Would you consider him at some level a globalist?
Well, not particularly. He's even said I prefer bilateral instead of multilateral treaties, and this is a multilateral treaty that we're discussing right now. The problem that we have and why we have such a large turnover in Trump's administration is he finally discovers in these people this globalist agenda that he didn't realize at first glance. And that's part of the problem that's going on right now is that we are so ingrained with this swamp, if you will, the deep state, and I got that all in my book, In the Shadows of the Deep State, explaining how extensive this web of subversion is. And there's another problem that even if Trump realizes that he's got a problem in putting a particular individual in, he's got to get it through the Senate. Now, you and I could agree on every individual that this guy or this gal is the best individual to do the Secretary of State, UN ambassador, whatever it happens to be. But could we get that through the Senate? It's very tough. And so he's got to kind of compromise in that manner. I'm surprised he's gotten as many judges through as he has, frankly.
It is a really important question. And while time is winding down, where do you think we are currently in fighting these off? What are the major treaties that are going through now? How much confidence that you have that we'll be able to hold them off, or do you think they're going to finally pass?
I don't know. I think it's a coin toss right now. There are a lot of things happening behind the scenes. One of the biggest disappointments in this regard is that there's no other conservative pundit that's actually read this treaty and is alarmed by it and saying this is wrong. We've done that before with the TPP. We've done it with the North American Union through the Security and Prosperity Partnership Agreement and all the rest of that stuff. This time we've not been able to get any of these people to take a look at it and say, whoa, wait a minute. And I think it's because they're so tied politically to Trump, they don't want to make it look like they're against him. And we're really not against Trump. What we're just saying is read it.
You know, it's funny. If liberals propose the same thing, it would be a lot easier to try to quash it, right?
That's right.
Because we recognize that Trump is a much better alternative than any of them. We're almost not willing to hold him to the same standard, and we may end up getting something that we might have been able to fight otherwise. Is that fair to say?
I think so.
Before we sign off today, would you take a moment and, again, mention the name of your book and when it's going to be available? How would people who want to find out more about what's in this book that you're writing, how do they get a hold of it?
Well, they can get it through jbs.org, shop JBS. And it's In the Shadows of the Deep State, and it completely goes into what the deep state really is. There are a lot of books out there on the deep state, but the problem is in the narrow confine that they discuss, they don't really discuss the broader aspect of the deep state. And in our book, we do, and show how it comes in from all angles towards this agenda that we were discussing.
And does your book cover the trade issue specifically?
Specifically in one chapter, yes.
And what's the main theme that runs through that chapter?
Basically, that it is a globalist initiative, that these things are tying our hands with trade, losing our control of our own economy.
And once you have it, it's almost impossible to get out.
Yeah.
The British voted to get out of what is basically a big trade union, right?
Correct.
The European Union, and they don't seem to have any possible way to do it, right?
Yeah, it's tough.
The will of the people has been ignored. Let that be a lesson. Art Thompson, CEO of the John Birch Society, thank you guys, the JBS, for your hard work for 50 years to keep trade free, and we hope we can continue to do it. I'm Dr. Duke for The New American.